Hello and welcome. Today we're going to make chili cornbread casserole. And when we do this, we are just going to be taking a normal cornbread recipe and a normal chili recipe and combining the two to get the results at the end. So this is two recipes disguised as one. So let's talk about the ingredients and then let's get right to it. Real quick before we get to the ingredients, I'd like to once again thank the subscribers and people who've been sharing the videos, and I would encourage anyone watching, if you're enjoying the content, to subscribe and also share. This would help me out greatly, and I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. For the chili, we need 1 can of tomato sauce, about 15.5 ounces, 1 can of kidney beans, and 1 can of navy beans. Both the beans need to be rinsed. 1 teaspoon salt and pepper, 1 teaspoon chili powder, 1 can Hatch green chilies or whatever kind of green chilies you can get, 2 tablespoons granulated garlic. If you don't have granulated, that would be about 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of cumin, and 2 teaspoons of minced onion. Again, if you were using powder, that would be more around 2 teaspoons. Alright, for our cornbread top, we need 1 cup milk or oat milk. Almond and soy did not work, but oat milk did. 1 cup of flour, 1 cup cornmeal, 1/3 cup sugar, a teaspoon of salt, 1 medium egg, and 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. If you have self-rising flour, you can just use that and leave out the baking powder, and that would work just as well. So for the chili part, we are going to take our rinsed and drained beans, in my case navy and kidney. You could use pintos, you could use whatever you would like there. The full-size can of tomato sauce, I kind of thought that might have been too much, but it ended up being perfect because of how much of the liquid's going to get absorbed. And that made the full-size can actually work really well. From there, we're just going to add our chilies and all of our dried spices, the onion, the garlic, the cumin, all that sort of thing. It doesn't really matter what order you add them in because you're going to end up just mixing it all up anyway. I'm using an 8x8 pan here, but you probably want to use a 9x9. This one overflowed a little bit when it was cooking, and it just wasn't as nice simply because of that little extra cleanup. So with a 9x9 pan, you probably won't have to do any form of extra cleanup. Once you get everything incorporated, mixed together, we're going to take this and set it aside in the refrigerator while we make our cornbread batter. So let's get over to that, and then we'll get to putting them together after we're done with that. For our cornbread mix, we're going to mix our cornmeal, our flour, 1/3 cup of sugar, our teaspoon of salt, 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and then we're going to use a whisk and mix the dry ingredients. Now, I've tried to lean the bowl so you can kind of see it, and you can get an okay view. What I'm looking for it to turn is progressively the dark yellow spots, the obviously yellow spots will go down, and everything will sort of become a pale yellow. Once you get it all mixed in, that's how you can kind of know you're going to get it all mixed in. Now, if you're using a slightly more coarse cornmeal, you will probably see a little bit less of a pale yellow and more white with yellow specks. Either way, that works just fine. So you don't have to worry about having too much. Now, once we got those all mixed together and you find it either the pale yellow or the pale yellow with dots, you're going to add your wet ingredients, the milk, and the egg. Now remember, out of all the non-dairy milks that I was able to try, only oat milk actually came out with a still cake-like texture, because that was the texture most cornbread is made into. So what you can notice I'm doing here is I'm just kind of scraping it around the outside, and I'm slowly pouring it on top of each other. I want it to get mixed, but since we're using a flour in here, especially an unbleached flour in my case, it's going to need a little bit of help to get completely mixed, but not over mixed. We don't want a bunch of gluten forming because we definitely don't want our cornbread to be chewy. So once you hit about this mixture, it's perfect, and we will get to putting it on our chili. So the final stop before we head to the oven is to put our cornbread batter on top of the chili. Now what I'm doing here with the spatula is I'm actually just I'm scraping the sides and I'm pushing it down so that the mass in the bottom of the bowl actually overfills the bowl, and it allows me to get more even sheets and ribboning, as you can see from the cornbread coming out. And that allows me to get a really even coverage around the whole thing. This recipe, by the way, does have a habit of cracking, so if you don't want that, I would suggest adding like a tablespoon of butter or lard or vegan spread, whatever you have, and that should work nicely. I'm also leaving the corners uncovered, and the reason for that is if, and it will, the chili boils, I want it to have somewhere to go rather than just pushing up and pushing the cornbread mix out. So once we go into our oven and we come back out after about a half an hour, 40 minutes, and you should have something that looks like this. Now this one is actually not quite done underneath, and I had tried it at a slightly higher temperature to see if I could cut the time down. It did not work. Like I said earlier, I would use a 9x9 pan where I used an 8x8, and it'll make your whole cornbread part much, much easier and much more even cooking. So I mentioned that we wanted our corners to not be full, and if you see this picture and the next picture, they both show where it had slightly overflowed. When I was doing some of the testing, a couple of them overflowed a lot more than that, and especially ones that had gone out of the oven and right back in. So you definitely want to keep a sheet pan under there just to make sure everything's all nice and clean, because you don't want to have to be cleaning the coils if you have an electric. So with that, we have finished our chili cornbread casserole. You can actually use the chili and the casserole recipes completely separate, and they're both good on their own. Any peppers or any other types of things you want to make, substitutions, like if you don't like garlic, you could take that out. You can take out the onions. If you do like them, you could add slightly more. You can kind of go a lot of ways with this. Although the way I definitely recommend the most is in a 9x9 pan, not an 8x8, because the 8x8 did overflow a little more often. All right. You have a great day, and I hope you come back for the next one. Enjoy your meal.